Hi guys, I'm Katie Room from Periapsis Press, where I review indie sci-fi and fantasy books. Today for our book club, we're discussing The Secret of Phelim Darke by S. Kirk Pierce Jala, which is the eighth story in Silence of the Starsong, Volume 1, Number 1, and it's actually her second story in this anthology. We discussed Free Lunch, I believe, in episode 5. So definitely check that out if you haven't yet. Joining me today is Patrick from Cave to the Cross, Michael Kane, the author of After Moses, and Tana. If you guys are interested in becoming a member of my Discord community and participating in these discussions, you can reach out to me either on Twitter at RedHedgeDragon or through my website. Okay. Did I pronounce it right? Phelim?
Darke.
Darke.
It's French. That's why it's Darke.
Yeah.
I would just say Phelim.
I went with Phelim.
Well, like
Nephilim,
name,
right? Nephilim. Phelim.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that what?
Phelim, probably, yeah. I assumed that was a reference somewhere.
The Nephilim just never sparked any
I googled it and it came up as a real name, so I was like, all right, whatever.
I looked at the same thing.
Just saying.
But that makes so much more sense.
You may have read a book that doesn't mention this whatsoever, and it should be praised for never mentioning this. So,
So this story is about a husband and wife who are struggling with fertility. And how did we decide that we pronounce this? Phelim? Phelim? This is going to bother me. Phelim?
Yeah.
Phelim. Okay.
Like an American, any way you choose.
That's right. Confidently.
Yeah.
Phelim Darke is the husband, and the wife's name isn't. What did I say?
Drake.
Did I say Drake? That's how I wrote it in my notes. That's why.
Oh.
In this particular spot, it's right elsewhere. I fixed that there. Darke. And Mrs. Darke, who is not. We don't get her first name until quite late. This story is only a few pages long, so
packs a lot in those few pages.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
Very dense for those few pages.
Mm-hmm.
So we start with a negative pregnancy test again, and she reminds him that they agreed that they would try to see somebody about it. He doesn't seem super enthusiastic about it. And she's upset. And when he goes to comfort her and he's maybe a little handsy, she accuses him of thinking everything's a game. And then we get a little flashback type or summary of where their relationship has been so far. With how their relationship started when he first saw her and their wedding, and he's very, very focused on sex. It is a bit of a game to him.
Yeah, he's tall, dark, and handsome. Good at everything, but also slowly getting terrible. Not at all like what happens in real marriages, where you just let everything go. No.
So did you liken this to like actual relationship stuff, Patrick? Because I know that's kind of how you were selling it a couple weeks ago.
So only because the ending didn't work for me. I don't know if we want to get spoilers.
Sure. We'll wait. So
I took it as a real relationship up until the point that I got to the end and went, "Oh, this made no sense."
Wait, did you not like? Okay, so there's a little detail that Katie skips over at the beginning of the first scene.
What did I do?
Well, where she says he kind of accuses him of playing a game. He says, "Of course not." And then he smiled crookedly, his sensuous upper lip
Oh.
curving to reveal an unusually sharp canine tooth. Well, maybe just a little bit of a game. Didn't you have fun? I mean, did that not tell you right there, Patrick, that this isn't?
Oh, so no, I took it from the female perspective.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I knew who he was, but I didn't know who she was, and it doesn't work for me.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Wait, we'll get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
So, before we move on, there's a little bit of a jab at utilitarian universalism.
That was the funniest part. That was hilarious to me.
It's okay, you'll all get it. That's why they keep me on here. Also, screen recording.
Yeah, the joke is basically that, well, that was the only religious ceremony he was going to consent to was Unitarian Universalist, which is it's pretty good.
I can walk through all
It's
these
pretty
doors.
good. I mean, in 2024, I could name a few other denominations that aren't too far away, but if you're some ancient Nephilim vampire guy, that's your bet. That's still the best bet, probably.
And as an author, you're not going to offend the Unitarian Universalist crowd.
No.
They're already offended.
With other denominations, the local church can really vary
Correct.
from what the
Right.
but
Correct.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting there.
The Australian Lutherans are just hardcore awesome. So
okay, so the next scene is skipping over the rest of the sort of flashback-y explanation. Was there anything else in there that you guys thought was important?
I mean, there's hints the whole way through there
Right.
that he's. I would say at this point in the novel, I'm thinking this is a vampire story, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's just at this point, it feels very clearly this is a traditional 20-aughts vampire.
Okay.
The suave, attractive, tall, dark, and handsome, pointy tooth guy.
Yeah.
Right. Who's going to woo the girl and then bite her.
Oh, I didn't think of vampire. I thought of incubus. Incubus.
The way that in the last century that vampirism has basically become inextricably linked to sexuality.
Yeah, boring.
It's basically ends up being the same thing the way that they are treated now.
Yeah.
Right.
But I immediately
Sorry, go ahead.
I immediately linked to vampire simply when it pointed out the canine. And there's also several times that I think necks are described. I feel there was definitely one that he described her neck very early, and I feel like there was another neck described at some point, but I could be wrong. There was definitely one neck description.
I didn't pick that up, but I didn't go with incubus partially because she was really firm about not having sex before marriage, right? Like she stood firm against his machinations, rebuffing him with a gentle, teasing manner.
Right, that's an interesting part because that this guy is a creature of the night in some way, form, or fashion, and somehow he's being placated by her pleas to wait. And this is just enticing enough that he's doing so, which is something a little different. That was the hook for the early part. Is like, what's his long game here? Why is he going for this?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he does.
And then
neck.
You found the neck piece bit
on the way to the doctor.
Mm.
Oh no, on the way to their wedding night.
Oh, yep. Sorry. The
Yep.
flash forward again.
Yep.
I think there's another one too then, because I'd forgotten about that one. Anyway, I think there's at least two then.
Yeah.
which feels like a lot of mentions of necks in like an 8-page story.
Sure,
So
sure.
so that with the teeth is why I assumed,
Yeah.
modern vampire.
But
But again, I don't have any issue with the succubus thing, because the way that the two have been so crossed in modern times, it's not a lot of difference functionally.
Yeah.
Okay, so they go and they visit a fertility doctor who is named
Hang? Huang?
Huang?
yeah,
Oscar Huang?
Oscar.
Huang? I don't know.
But it doesn't really matter because he's really in there for like 3 paragraphs.
So half the story.
She's fine, and Phelim, it has everything's fine until the samples disappear in front of the tech's eyes, which Phelim seems to think is a little bit of a joke. Yeah, partially hiding an amused smile. So she picks up on something not being quite right and says afterwards, we need to talk.
The dreaded.
Wasn't going to make the joke.
So they go for a walk in the park instead of heading home right away. And she accuses him of hiding something from her.
Accuse.
And then we start getting something a bit more interesting. We start to, he never says what he is. But he starts talking about motivations. So he's speaking in the plural. So he's not the only one. Not that he's plural, but there are more people like him. And he says, we've been fascinated with enfleshment, and talks about uniting a pure spirit with crude matter, and specifically with sex with women. And he likens it to myths about Zeus and Apollo. The wife is not displaying any emotions that one would typically display in a YA vampire novel at this point in the tale.
She doesn't have a fainting couch there.
The very first time he starts to say something, and then she's like, perhaps do go on, is the hint of okay, there's a second piece of information which is really important here.
Yep. Yeah, she like he's like, you wouldn't get it, and she's like, well, why don't you try me? And he's like, okay. And then like, starts talking, and she's like, uh-huh. And he's like,
right,
okay.
And he's disconcerted. It says he's disconcerted at her enigmatic expression, because he's thinking, ancient Nephilim vampire lord, I'm going to ruin this woman's whole life right in this reveal moment. And she's just looking at him like, continue, honey. Come on, keep telling your story.
Exactly. Her response is to question about the myths about the offspring of Zeus and Apollo, which Phelim says is merely wishful thinking. And she then says, so all this time you've never once achieved a true case of incarnation. And he responds like a demon. He hisses in pain and like pulls away to the far end of the bench, like he's a cat going into a corner or something. Like, you're not stuck on the bench. But apparently he wanted to go to the corner.
Look, she's his wife. He's still trying to work things out. Okay, I'm kidding.
We'll go back to him in 2 more weeks. It's fine.
This again. He says, don't ever use that term again. And he is upset It says he hated being reminded that only once in all of human history, a pure spirit successfully implanted itself in crude flesh. And only because that spirit had written the rules in the first place. So, as far as Phelim was concerned, it was bald-faced cheating.
That man was Gandalf.
Why, Patrick? Why? Oh, there it is. Okay, continue.
Hannah, I know you had a question about this part.
I did.
You mentioned
I
it.
did. Yes, I did. 2 weeks ago?
I think so.
Last week? Yes. Okay. I should have reread the story too. I read the story very close to our last meeting. So I was taken aback. So I had to reread. It's the paragraph on the left side on the top of page 73. And I had to reread it a couple times to make sure that I actually was following like the right sentence structure. But I'm pretty sure that she refers to the Holy Spirit as it. And I had a lot of issues with that. It's a capital I.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Which paragraph? Because I've got digital, so I can't tell you exactly where that is.
Let's see. It is. I'm trying to get the context. So she mentions the word incarnation, and then he goes to the far end of the bench.
Mhm.
He folds his arms across his chest, and then in the following paragraph. So let's see here. And only because that spirit, capital S, had written the rules in the first place and could bend them whenever it felt like it, capital I.
So, do you want my response to that?
Yes.
It's from the demon's point of view. He's getting a bunch of things theologically wrong and insulting, and you can just write that off as that because you have an unreliable narrator. It's like, for instance, when he starts talking about earlier, he talks about crude flesh and pure spirit. He's basically making Gnostic heresies right there too.
Okay, so it's from
so it's still it's his perspective there.
Okay.
So you can assume if he's not lying, yeah, I would say he's lying and or at the very least has a very bad understanding of the truth. So
Yeah.
I don't know which way you want to take that there, but that's what I would say.
Okay.
To that.
Okay.
I would too. I would say that paragraph is written in the sullen attitude that's referred to in the previous paragraph.
Yeah.
It's sort of just kind of resentful.
Right.
Yeah.
That's also a good way to say that.
That makes sense. Well, and I suppose that as a Christian, I had the proper reaction to it.
Right.
If I had been like, yeah.
You have a demon spouting heresies. You are supposed to be upset with that.
Yes, I was. Katie can.
I think this is the bad guy. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, at that point I had not read. I had not done the reading, and she had. And I was like,
and then I got the stories mixed up. Katie was like, "Don't you mean this one?" Oh, yep. Okay, well, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And based on her theology, I guess maybe before this and after it, I would assume that she would know the Holy Spirit is He. And so, yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Next, the wife has a reaction to this as well, to the concept, right, of incarnation, and she's more enraptured by the idea, and specifically quotes, "The power of the Most High overshadowed her. The Word became flesh," and he snaps at her and uses her name for the first time.
Yeah.
Up until now, it's been Mrs. Darke. And now he calls her Angela.
Which that's not telling, is it?
Not on the nose at all.
She's a demon too. Right? No? Oh, that's why it didn't work for me.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, very similar. Oh man.
You got Phelim and Angela.
And he says, "I thought you'd be more upset." And then we get some angelic descriptions of her. A shaft of sunlight struck through the branches behind her, setting her gold hair ablaze in a halo of glory. And that's not the only one. There's more later. She continues. She is now talking to him. He's been sort of talking, and now she's kind of giving us information as well. Yeah, the wisest among us are correct. That some knowledge is better gained through experience than pure theoretical knowledge. And then she asks him, do you agree? Did you ever truly feel anything? Did you ever have satisfaction? And then the focus for that answer is on the ability to have children. He kind of is thinking about animals that can have children and bugs that will have offspring and will be more productive than he will ever be. And he doesn't respond. And she says, me neither. As you said, it was all a game in the end. At first, I thought we had a chance to make this work. I thought if we loved hard enough, something special would happen. But it was all a rude parody. Beings like ourselves were created for a different sort of love. And then she says, perhaps it's time we went our separate ways. And she leaves. And that's the end. Thoughts? Patrick.
Oh, man. All right.
Well, you've already hinted that you have thoughts. So now that we're here at the end.
Here's the spoilers, yes.
Yeah.
So it like the free lunch, it only makes sense in the context of this story, but her initial behaviors, her forlornness, her consternation with his attitude is betrayed by the end. Like if she's the double agent here, then the story has essentially lied to me to get me to the end, and I don't like that part. Where if and maybe and I'd love to hear other people's ones, because maybe I didn't focus on what her, I guess, purpose of this was, because it's not like she's trying to bring about the end of the world by creating an antichrist, right? So she's trying to do something, but I never understood what her end goal was, and maybe I did lose something there. But the fact that it's almost like she always knew, then I don't understand the point of everything that came before. If she's okay, we're at the end of our turn here, and now I'm going to pull the rug out from underneath you.
I wonder if her question, did you ever have satisfaction? Did you ever truly feel anything? Did you ever have satisfaction? I don't think he's fully answering the question that she's asking. It's like she is asking more of a love and fulfillment thing, whereas he is still thinking about his, the desire to procreate, basically, to reproduce, to carry on your own lineage. And so there's part of it. So she asks one question and doesn't, but sighing, she shook her head. The sunlight danced in her heart. Me neither. Katie, what are you feeling here? Am I barking up the right tree there, that he's not actually answering her question?
Well, he doesn't say anything.
Correct, but they're not saying anything. We still get his answer, right? Because we're in his point of view, even if he doesn't express it to her. Like husbands and wives that have been around each other a long time, that's answering the question for her, because she knows what his answer is.
Sure.
Because she actually knows what his, this marriage they both have completely different purposes for it, is almost what it seems like.
But
And she also asks a question that she should be asking, a real question and not a fake question, so that we're supposed to psychologically know differences about questions. And
I thought that was just women.
Well, and
I
I
mean, not
think
my
that
wife. I'm just saying you guys that I see
I think
out in the world.
So here's this may be taking us in a little bit of a different direction.
go for it.
I thought, sort of setting aside angels and demons, gender, and whether or not they can procreate, I thought that the story reduced marriage to reproduction, the purpose of marriage to having children. And because his response to her question was to think about how he can't have kids and I interpreted her as being similar because of the way that she responds. Uh, she says, I thought we had a chance to make this work, and make this work is then semicolon next sentence. I thought if we loved hard enough, something special would happen.
Or is the specialness like he would have a change of heart and that's how heaven will slay the demons or the.
But this whole thing started with fertility.
Right.
And he wasn't super interested in fertility treatments, and she was.
Right, right.
So so this conversation with him helps her to come to a conclusion about her own ability to have children. And that is negative. She can't, and she hightails it out of there. Okay, well, we can't do that, so there's no point in us even being together at all. So that
I'm still interpreting it as she's meaning more than just the children thing there. I think there's a little bit of both being worked in, both the children and do you actually love me sort of thing.
So,
Because
she's saying if we have a child, maybe he'll change after that.
well,
because if so, I love the story so much.
I mean, I'm not sure that it's not possibly meant that way, because I do think that her question carries some loaded meanings of both, as well as her response to his non-answer negative. Or at least I don't think that I can confidently say it's only the fertility thing, because there's more going on in this. They've been married. We make the assumption there's more going on than just this purely carnal relationship, right? We make there's some assumption that there is some level of attachment here. I feel that there's an intention of both.
could be.
And that makes the following make a little more sense, probably. I'm
still like, well, you guys got married, so until one of you dies, you're stuck with each other. What do you mean it's time to go our separate way?
So that's what's going to be the because obviously we have a fantastical situation here, and I don't think this is the way things work and things like that, but it's fiction, right? And that's okay.
Right, yeah.
That's the part that theologically that I don't know how to parse is the ethics of what Angela is doing here in relation to angels who cannot be perfect because they are not God, but do they sin, which is not something we have any biblical foundation to say yes to, right? And would you say that Angela's behavior here through the whole thing, this desire to come down, well, I'm going to find this demon that's been out conquering women for millennia, and I'm going to basically be the ultimate honey trap, capture him. We're going to, because there's this, to me, I feel that Angela wants there to be something more than just this procreation thing, whereas he's wholly fixated on that, and that's partially why she knows it can't work, because he's only on the lineage thing.
I
Yeah,
don't
but
know. I don't know if she knew that what he was though, because
Oh, I think she knew. No,
she
I think
says
she
we
knew.
have to talk, right? Like she's like, you're hiding something from me. So
Oh, I think she knows. I think she knows.
I don't know.
well, I think she knows because I think she's trying to get the answer to this question about the did you ever really feel anything? All cards on the table. Now
Right.
we drop all the facade
Now you have to tell me the truth. I'll tell you the truth, but you
yeah.
have to tell it to me.
Yeah.
No, I think she knows. Because it becomes very clear through the last scene, as soon as it's we need to talk, that she has the upper hand the entire time. It's made clear. I think she knows.
All right.
To me, that's the sense that I've got, because at that point he's got nothing on her for the entire rest of the story. At any moment does he have anything on her? Right? He thinks he's got the best reveals. I'm gonna ruin this woman's whole world by revealing who I am, and it only just he's just on the back foot the rest of the time, because she's not perturbed at all. She starts, talking about Jesus, and that really weirds him out.
And I think that's where I get confused by the story is okay. So they're not going the route of a demon and an angel fall in love and produce an offspring. Garth Ennis's Preacher is kind of that story in an alternate world called Texas. That's how Ennis couches it in, and the power of the voice of God comes out and indwells himself in a human. We don't get that. She's not trying. It doesn't seem like she's trying to turn the demon into like a different thing. It seems to be for her an area of procreation, but her understanding of the incarnation is almost flippant, and it's only said there at the backing into the bench. Like
I don't think any flippancy is meant there.
well, it's,
what do you mean by
maybe
that?
flippant, but it's very like it's not covered. So if she's focused on like we must produce a child in order to bring about a antichrist type deal, okay, that'd be something, but it doesn't. And in fact, for what her focus should be is I think about the was it First Peter 10 or no, it's First Peter 1 where it says the angels look into these things, that is salvation. And she doesn't seem to be concerned with salvation here. It seems to be procreation, having children. And so if her focus was also on not just like having kids, but more about the incarnation and like trying to reproduce it, and then comeuppance happens to her, that would be something, because that's like God saying, no, I did it right the first time, and your plan to do this is wrong. Unless if it's just the failed marriage is the end product where she wasted all this time. But I don't see that. I just don't. I don't see the fulfillment of this end product. It's a nice little twist. I get it.
Well,
but...
right. It is. You're right. There's not a fulfillment in that. It is a failure, and I don't think there's any way to shake this story down that she's not clearly in the wrong in multiple ways too.
Yeah, but nothing happens to her, which I don't appreciate.
Well, we don't know that. She leaves. And he doesn't get to see what happens. She might return to and face, who knows? I don't know. We don't know about this in Angels.
Face the ground as she's cast out of heaven.
Well, because this story didn't change point of views at the last second in a brilliant twist, we don't get to see what happens. We don't know. But
we just did that so Katie would keep reading.
I was gonna say, like Patrick said, she'll be back in 2 weeks because she can't get into heaven again.
Hey, can I have a place to crash? and there's no picking her. Like at the beginning, there should be some like thing that like gravitates him to her, and maybe her to him as in like, okay, I'm trying to have a child. I'm not a Nephilim. I didn't fall. The Nephilim, according to certain proclivities in Christianity, are the fallen sons of God who come down to earth, look upon the daughters of men, and procreate, and that's where you get people like Goliath and the giants and stuff like that. And so there's no uh, like end product for that. I just don't see the tie-in with that.
I guess I don't understand what you're saying well enough to respond to that.
It's a very
Look, here, let me say this. Yes, it's going to be unfulfilling. Yes, they're obviously both very wrong because it is a story about a broken marriage, ultimately, which is going to be tragic on some level. And probably both of them are responsible in most cases, right? This isn't an abusive marriage. This is clearly one where there's been some cross motives. They both went into it with false pretenses.
Right. So
expressed
my
to the
point
other.
is, my point with that being that if she's looking for like a potential mate as an angel, then the Nephilim would be the closest entity that she could produce with, because he's kind of like half in the world, half not in the world.
Sure.
Yeah. So
that's why I think that she knew who he was absolutely the whole time,
sure,
and played the ultimate honey trap. Which is why he could. Which is why he was well, right? Because it fails, and they were probably by their nature never going to be able to reproduce. They couldn't have.
But I know the reason for him. I don't know any reason for her other than just it didn't work. But I don't know what the it of the full on story of what is her that didn't work. Also not having kids?
especially with the mythology of Nephilim being about having children with the daughters of men, right?
Right, but there is also a shift in this, in that we bring up the Zeus, and that those are lies. That there's a mythologizing that's not quite what happens there.
Yeah, which I do like, because she does ask, like, is there any truth to that? And there you could have like, oh, well, have you met my son Hercules, Perseus? You could go down those routes, because Zeus turned himself into a cow and pull women. But this is for anyone who doesn't have a date, you're up against a cow. So,
but this is a clear. There's a breaking from those particular traditions of Nephilim mythology there, and I think that's an interesting shift too, of saying that no, we can't. That hasn't worked. We've been trying for this long, and it doesn't work so far as we know.
And so, random woman number 1722, who I guess shows me there was nothing special about you, but I'm going to try because I'm immortal until the end times.
Well, there's also there's also the lustful aspect for him as well. Although, like, for him, the original deepest desire per se did come from that desire to reproduce. There is also very clearly, when you read through, there's the carnal succubus type aspect you talked about.
But there's also no like tale of corruption in there too. Like she's so if you go kind of like the vampire route, the sacrificial virgin, and the whole like mythos there is like, ooh, the tainted love of sex outside of marriage in Victoria era, and you don't get that. Honey, just hold on until we get to the hotel, and then we're okay.
And again, on the flip side, I thought that's an interesting twist, because that's not what you expect. Your expectations are being subverted. Of this guy's actually agreeing to this. This is interesting. Why is he this wrapped up into her? And that's, again, your first clue that she's not just Mrs. Darke, but she's Angela, right? And that he is that wrapped up into her, that he's agreed to wait to have sex until their marriage. Right? That's not normal Nephilim behavior, Patrick.
Well, I think Patrick kind of hits on something here, though.
Yeah. Go, Katie.
Because
that happened once.
No, keep going.
Is not obviously a bad person, right? Like, until he has a physical withdrawal from the idea of the incarnation versus enfleshment, right? There's nothing that suggests that he is irredeemably depraved, right?
I don't know that I agree with that. But
Okay.
because it's a story, right? It's a story, and we get some from that from the beginning of showing that tooth and that whole second scene through the marriage. It's from his point of view, and he makes it's very clear. He knew no other way to talk really, since he approached all relationships as a game, right? You're getting from his perspective. So he's not going to really portray himself as irrationally depraved, but you have some very strong clues that this dude is
maybe
real bad.
I'm coming at this from the fluffier vampire stories, but
right,
like there's
so many women in this era were willing to do anything, anywhere, at any moment. Suggests that he has taken part of that anywhere,
I'm not
anyone,
saying
any
that
moment,
he's
right?
Yes.
I'm not saying that he's
these
not
days.
a bad
Virginal
guy,
sacrifice.
right?
Good luck with that, buddy.
I'm saying that there's nothing that indicates necessarily that he is anything worse than a bad boy, right? Like a vampire-y bad guy, right?
But isn't a vampire-y bad guy a really
this is only half
thing?
of my point. Like, argue with me about half of my point.
Sorry, continue.
Angela isn't perfect, right? Like, she's not, for lack of a better word, right? Like, she's not angelic, right?
I was waiting for you to say that.
Right. So the fact that there isn't that stark contrast, I think, is part of what Patrick was trying to get at.
Yeah, or at least like trying to corrupt that. Like, okay, it's not working, and I hate humanity so much, so I'm going to tease this out. Like, maybe, well, this wouldn't be evil, but cheat on your taxes a little bit. So I'm just saying, I'd be more on his side. But there's not like a all of a sudden she goes from prom queen virgin to like hooked on meth and killing people for a fentanyl tab. You don't see like
I have
that
no idea where you're going with this.
like you don't see that depravity. So like what he's married for all this time, he's just boring. He's a terrible demon to do this. He offers nothing. He needs to corrupt humanity. He needs to be a serial killer on the weekend.
Again, here's the thing, though, is that he's fallen for the ultimate honey trap, in that she's better at some of this game than he is.
Yeah, but
he only
turns normal when they go to the fertility doctor.
Well, because she forces his hand by basically saying, we have to talk.
Yeah, but it's not like he's like, what have I been doing for the last 40 years? I've suddenly hit my demon midlife crisis, and now I need a sports car and 2 sacrificial virgins half the age of my wife. Like I see no corruption or like him being tricked, other than, haha, I was an angel the whole time. Like, okay.
But that's outside. That's not how it works in this story. That's outside the scope of this story, and you're just
disagree.
He's
a Nephilim. He's a Nephilim.
She's an angel.
Yeah, if you're going to invoke him being a vampire or corrupting force from ye old times, then you have to go down that route, or show me that it's stopped.
There's myth fudging going on.
Yes, deliberate.
I don't appreciate.
And I'm okay with myth fudging. I mean, nobody's sparkling, so. But at the same time,
don't let me get David in here and tell you how great that book is. Okay,
it's a good book. Just the fact that they sparkle is stupid.
Do you know how many years it took me to realize that people weren't kidding when they said sparkling, and it wasn't like some joking metaphor about the attractiveness of the vampires? I had no idea people were being literal when they said that.
It's like, it's one of those things that you read in the book and you're like, okay, that's kind of stupid. And then you like see it on the silver screen and you're like, who thought this was a good idea?
Oh, try being the only single guy in the audience and looking around and not realizing that it's supposed to be like this femme fatale or anti-femme fatale story. Like, wait a minute. What? That's why the guy at the ticket booth was like, seriously, one? All right, here you go, buddy.
So,
I
but oh,
I still I think that the story is short enough that the fact that there is he's not as like okay, it's like Patrick said, right? Like he's not corrupting her. She's not like acting in a what we would
she's not a
say like
thrall. She's
well,
not the
not a thrall, but
vampire's
like she's
thrall.
also not like a like there are several things that I would point to in the story and say that's probably a sin, right? Like you
Sure.
lied to your husband,
I
so
look,
right, like
that's what I said when we get to the end. I don't think there's any way that we can say that she is fully in the correct in any sense. There's
right.
this a string of transgressions through the story, and that's when you compare to real world theology. Is that even remotely compliant with anything related to angels? I don't think that we've got anything we can biblically say that, but for the purpose of the story, you're right, she's in the wrong.
But it's such a short story, and the focus is on their ability to have children and how that's impacting their marriage. It's just I'm not sure what the point was,
If it
if
would
that makes
succeeded,
sense.
they both
Mhm.
would have gotten exactly what they wanted. And that would have been interesting.
It's maybe it's trying to say something about the incarnation, but I
Well, I at the very least, I don't think it's really trying to say something about the incarnation, other than that it's treating it as something that is cosmologically unique. And
yeah,
I think that's a perfectly fine thing to say. I don't know that that's hugely the point of the story, other than that is something that is built into the mythology, that the demons could not have children with women, and he could not have children even with an angel that was willing and wanting to as well. So I think it's significant in that it lays the groundwork for the mythology of the story. I don't think it's necessarily the point the story is trying to make, but it's certainly part of the, like I said, the foundation of the story.
yeah.
All right, so here's my outlandish idea. It
Okay.
doesn't
Wait,
work.
wait, are we at like 3 or 4?
Per this book or this story? Because
The story.
so the reason it doesn't work is because it's God so loved the world that he gave his son, but these two people don't love each other, and the inability is because there's no real love there, and maybe that's the focus of it. You're
You say
welcome. You
that.
saved the story. Good job,
I,
team.
I actually don't know that that's the wildest thing, simply because of what she says. I thought if we loved hard enough, something special would happen. So there's at least that belief from Angela's part that plays some part. Now, we don't know if that's actually true, and she's treating this relationship as a failure because they didn't love hard enough, or if she's discovered that, well, it's just simply not true.
Okay, then
But
my other outlandish theory is that this is to hide the ice wall for the flat Earth, and it's going to reveal.
you did so much better with the first theory for once, that it actually seemed to have some support in the story.
Listen, if it's gonna fudge the myth, I'm gonna fudge the myth. So firmament. It says firmament.
Firmament. I'm
St-
left
Still not a bad story. It didn't
right.
hate me. I appreciated things about it. Just came up short with the ending, like the other one.
Look, I'll say again what I keep saying is that this is another short story that plays upon short story strengths, right? Comes in with a completely unique idea, makes its case, presents the interesting situation, leaves you with questions to think about that you can argue about for an hour with friends, and then gets out. So I'm going to say it's effective even if I don't fully understand everything, and that there's something there to chew on. And that, I think, is what the story was trying to do. And so from that aspect, successful.
Don't be in the holy water. Don't split the party. Don't have sex with the witch, and also don't try and have babies with the demon. Is that our big takeaway? Our meta narrative?
No, you can't have babies with the demon.
So don't even try. Or you can't change people in a relationship.
That's too close to home. Too true. All right, Hannah, you were about to say something. We cut you off.
No,
go for it.
I was just going to say that I came to the same conclusion, that it was an entertaining story to read. But then as soon as I started to think about it too much, I was like, maybe I didn't like it. So that's kind of how I reacted.
But if it left you thinking, though, is that a bad thing?
That's right.
Even if ultimately you dislike what you thought about.
Yeah, that's true.
Katie?
I don't know. I feel very ambivalent. I came away with a more negative thematic conclusion than you did, Michael. So, and maybe that is.
I don't even remember what my thematic conclusion was. I'm okay with leaving things up in the air, and I think that's something that Patrick and Katie are less okay with as this has gone on. That I think short stories are very good at doing that, and an appropriate art form for doing that.
I'm okay that the demons are still in the nukes. I don't need the rest of the story. I just would appreciate it.
I don't know. I would have liked to go somewhere with this a bit. Landed somewhere a bit more strongly. And I think that is why I ended up thinking about it after the fact, is because I wasn't sure where the story was trying to land. And that bothered me. I don't need everything to be tied up with bows, but if I just knew a bit better what I was supposed to take away from it, I think
relationships are hard. Fertility issues are hard. Divorce is bad. And
okay.
Don't try and have babies with the demon.
If you marry a demon, I'm gonna say it's probably okay to hit the big D on that one and drop out.
It's still tragic though, because there is a sense that you are through this whole thing, because he was willing to wait for their marriage. There's a sense that it's like, okay, maybe he can be reasoned with, maybe this can be made to work. He was at least patient with her there, right? So you're like, maybe this works out, and then it doesn't, and that's dissatisfying.
And it's her fault that it doesn't. That's what I'm saying.
I don't look, he was willing to drop the ultimate bombshell and probably destroy her life and walk away in that park at the beginning of the conversation.
That's your own interpretation of his.
But also from the doctor, we know conclusively that she's fine.
Right, but when you're dropping the bomb saying, "Hey, you remember, all those women's that Zeus shacked up with? That was basically me." Do you think that's not trying to really mess with her? I mean, come on.
Yeah, but see, because he's the guy, you divide it by 3, and then you get the real number. So
I don't know. I interpreted him as being less, and maybe it's because I have read the fluffier vampire stories where like this kind of reveal has to happen, right? And then the girl has to be okay with it in order for the relationship to move on. So I don't. She
already knew. He was the one that got his world rocked.
Yeah.
She was okay with it. That wasn't the problem. The problem is they've been lying to each other the whole time, built an entire relationship on cross purposes, And once that all came out and it all came crashing down,
But were
the
they at
marriage
cross
dissolved.
purposes? Because they were both after the same thing, like Patrick said.
But
The problem wasn't the line. The problem was he's a demon.
That is a problem.
Okay,
That
granted.
is a problem.
I'm not going to mention the Norm Macdonald joke where he's like, all right. Anyway, I think the real problem was this thing.
Yeah.
TOS friendly here. To hit all our bingo cards, though, I would like to know, what did Michael think about the pros?
I didn't really think that deeply about it this time. It's probably because the story was very set in this very modern kind of setting, and it was just very modern prose. So it was invisible, which is successful, I guess. Invisible prose is successful prose too.
Good. All right, we've all knocked it on our bingo card now.
Yeah, okay. I hadn't even thought about it until you mentioned it. So there you go. That's exactly what I was meaning by invisible.
All right. Does anybody have anything else to wrap up with, or anything they wanted to say? Patrick has already compared it to Free Lunch. Did anybody else want to? That I liked Free Lunch, so this one was a little bit probably liked it less than Free Lunch. But
are we gonna have to do a ranking at the end of this and then hurt the feelings of the authors? It's like,
this is by the same person.
I know. Yes, you were comparing both of them.
Again, I don't feel like any of these stories have like wasted my time.
Exactly.
Or like been something that I didn't get to the end and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe. Like even the ones that may or may not be in the future or in the past that we might have talked about at some point in time within the scope of humanity, that's pretty ambivalent enough. Even my least favorite one wasn't like, oh gosh, I can't believe I put any time to it. And not just because it's short story, because I've got a whole slew of short stories over here. I'm like, well, I've got it on the shelf and that's good enough. So,
well, and part of the reason I think for that is, as I've been saying, that I think most of these stories are hitting what a good short story should do for, structurally speaking. You don't have to like its conclusion. You don't have to like think back on it a year later and say, oh, I enjoyed that. Because some of these are meant to be less enjoyed and more intellectually stimulating. I don't know how exactly you want to say that. So I think they're fulfilling their purpose. And I think part of that is Patrick not saying, well, I'm not hating any of these. I'm enjoying reading them, even though I enjoy the ones I don't like, right? That's kind of basically what you're saying. And that's because I think they're doing what they're doing. They're doing what they're doing well, which means the editors did a good job of picking stories that fit together and all.
Exactly. Unlike other editors, this editor, not just because I know him, did a good job of curating very, very different stories, but also like you can see the through line through it. I know Katie and I in the first episode, you wanted to go to the end, saying it's at the beginning, which I agree. But also, I do kind of like to, even though I read it and then read the end, we discussed it, but I've read all these stories, and so it's a good philosophy that he wraps up in there. And so I'm curious to see, because for your Twitter post for the previous one, he made mention that they made some editorial changes in talking about the genres being listed in the table of contents, which I think might be interesting as a way of either sweetening the pot or poisoning the well, depending on which way you want to take it. So I'm curious to see what the next series is, if we do that one. If not, I'll read it and tell you guys.
Because then we can argue
all the correct opinions.
Because then we can argue about whether it was actually fantasy or if it was science fiction, or if science fiction even exists.
Or as Patrick
random
says,
Twitter drama.
What do you call it? The
lesser
superior. The
lesser sci-fi. Yes.
The lesser
Fantasy
sci-fi.
is the lesser side.
Oh, I have to remember that for a certain subset of Twitter people that like to bash sci-fi.
All right. Well, we encourage you, if you haven't already, to buy the Silence and Starsong magazine. There's 3 issues in the first volume, and there's a second volume coming out, I think,
Yeah.
sooner or
Oh
later.
yeah.
And if this story or free lunch sounded interesting to you, I encourage you to check out Pierce Chala's other work. And again, if you're interested in joining us, we would love to have you. Just reach out to me. Thank you to Patrick, Michael, and Hannah, and to everybody watching. Please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And yeah, have a great day.